Alright, this will be the last video for this review on problem number 38. Let's see, we got to find a plus 2b, so let's go ahead and write down a. And for b, we're going to want to double each of these values. So we're going to get 4, 2 times 2, 2 times 8 is 16, 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, and we'll get 2 and negative 8. And so when we add these together, we want to add the corresponding parts or entries. So 1 and 4, that's going to give us 5. 0 and 16, that's going to give us 16. Negative 2 and 10 will give us 8. And you can just continue this and you should get those values there. Let's look at part B. So first of all, we need to find 3a minus 2b. So let's go ahead and distribute the 3, or basically just multiply each entry by 3 in the first one here. So you should get this matrix here. Just multiply every entry by 3. Now be careful on the second part. What I found to be the easiest is we could multiply by 2 and then subtract all our entries, but it's probably easier just go ahead and multiply by negative 2, and so we're going to end up adding what we get. So negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, negative 2 times 8 is negative 16, negative 2 times 5 is negative 10, and we're going to get 4, negative 2, and 8. So I find it easier to multiply by negative 2 and then just add the two matrices. If you multiplied by positive 2, you just make sure you subtract, but be very careful. And so now we'll add our corresponding entries, and this is what you should get. Let's look at 39. So on 39, we've got to multiply row 1 by negative 3 and add that to row 3. And that's going to become our new row 3. So let's go ahead and do that. So rows 1 and 2 don't change. So I'm going to write those in. So now let's multiply negative 3 times each entry in row 1. And we're going to go ahead and add those values to row 3. 0 and 2 is 2. Negative 3 and negative 3 is negative 6. And negative 6 and negative 4 is negative 10. And so that's our final, whoops, let me go back to that. That's our final answer there. Let's go ahead and move on. So number 40, these are the ones that take a little bit of time. So let's go ahead and first write this as a matrix. Now we got to remember we need to put it in this special form where we have 1s on the main diagonal and 0s below our 1s. So the first thing we need to do is get a 1 right in this spot here. So the easiest way to do that is let's just switch our first two rows. So let's do that, and that's the matrix you'll get. So all I did is switch the first two rows. So one thing we learned is once we have a 1 in this spot here, we want to get zeros below that 1. We're going to use that 1 to in fact get those zeros. So let's go ahead and figure out how to get a 0 here and here. So for this one, we're going to need to multiply the first row by negative 3 and add it to row 2. And for this spot here, to get a 0 there, we're going to need to multiply, let's see, the first row by negative 1 and add that to row 3. You can just think of it as negative row 1. So let me go ahead and write the first row because that's not going to change. Let's multiply each of row 1, each number in row 1 by negative 3. And so those are the numbers we want to add to row 2. So negative 3 and 3 is 0. Negative 3 and 1 is negative 2. Negative 6 and 2 is negative 4. And negative 57 and 31 is negative 26. Now we're going to multiply negative 1 times row 1. So let me just change the signs. And we're going to add those values to row 3. Let's see, so negative 1 and 1 is going to be 0, which is what we were looking for. Negative 1 and 3 is 2. Negative 2 and 2 is 0. And negative 19 and 25 is 6. So now that we've got our 1 and then the zeros below in this first column, we're going to want to go down to the next number in this diagonal and get a 1 there. So the easiest way, those are all even numbers. Let's just divide by negative 2. Or the other way, the way we normally do it is using multiplication. Multiply by the reciprocal, that would be negative 1/2. So we're going to multiply row 2 by negative 1/2 and make that my new row 2. So again, the other way to think of it is we're dividing by negative 2. So let me write the other two rows, 1 and 3. So negative 2 divided, well, 0 divided by negative 2 is 0. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 gives me the 1 that I was looking for. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is 2. And negative 26 divided by negative 2 is 13. So now that we got this 1, we want to get a 0 below it. So we're going to use that 1 that we just got, this one here, to get a 0 right here. Okay, so we need to multiply by negative 2 and add that to row 3. So negative 2 times row 2 added to row 3 is going to be my new row 3. So I'm going to go ahead and write the first two rows. And let's go ahead and multiply by negative 2 times row 2. And I'm going to write that at the bottom. So negative 2 times row 2, that's what I just wrote here. Let's add that to row 3. 0 and 0 is 0. Negative 2 and 2 is 0. Negative 4 and 0 is negative 4. And 6 and negative 26 is negative 20. So we're one step away. We just need a 1 here. So let's go ahead and divide by negative 4. Again, we could think of that as multiplying by the reciprocal. And when we do that, let's rewrite our first two rows. And let's divide by negative 4. Negative 4 divide negative 4 is 1, and negative 20 divide negative 4 is 5. So let's go ahead and write this as a system now. And we can back substitute. So let's plug in 5 for z. We'll get y plus 2 times 5 equals 13. Or y plus 10 is 13. And we're going to get y equals 3. Now we'll have to substitute the z and y values into the first equation, and then we can find x. So let's see, 3 plus 10, that's going to be 13, and we're going to end up getting 6 here. So finally, final question, final answer, we are going to get the point 635, the ordered triple. Alright, and that's going to be it.